Eddie. I got to tell you, man, there's a ton to get to today. There's a ton to unpack today. There's announcement upcoming today. There's announcement that we were hoping for yesterday that drags out. There's the biggest sporting event in the world to preview for the weekend. There's the Fever game upcoming and talking about how they regroup after the Golden State loss. There's baseball resuming back in activity. There's a ton going on. And I'm not going to belabor the point off the top of the show because that would be not exactly in any way, shape, or form on this Friday morning what people are anticipating, expecting, hoping for, or wanting to hear. But I got to tell you, 4 words for you, Eddie Garrison, at this 10 o'clock hour on a Friday.
Hey, Jake. How you doing?
You missed out, buddy. That's all I'm going to say. You missed out. The chance of a lifetime last night for you, and you missed out. And I'll get to it coming up here in just a little bit on what took place last night that I have to admit, there's a lesson in it. There's a lesson in it when it comes maybe even to sport in the fact that you can hear about something, you can kind of roll your eyes about something, you can just assume that something is overrated or doesn't live up to the expectation or is living off its. Give me a sporting event, Eddie, in your mind.
Am I going to have to host the show for like 20 minutes today, Jake, so you can, like right now, so you can make your run back home?
My run back home?
Yeah, because you're not wearing your Guns N' Roses shirt that you promised Lori Lindsey on earlier this week. You said next time she was on, you'd wear the Guns N' Roses shirt.
But you know what? I did think about this. Because Lori Lindsey, who's going to join us coming up here in just about 25 minutes to preview the World Cup, because she has always been on Zoom, but she told me that today, and I don't know if I told you this part of it, she's traveling, so she's like, hey, I can definitely do Friday at 10:30, but I'm going to be in the airport, and so therefore I won't be available on Zoom.
Oh, you did not tell me this.
Yeah, so I'm just going to tell her I'm wearing the Guns N' Roses t-shirt. I did send her a playlist, though. I said, hey, because she had told me that she wanted to learn more about the greatness that is Oasis, and I said, well, I'll send you a playlist. But either way, give me an event off the top of your head, Eddie, that everyone's I'm towing a dangerous line here because there are a lot of people that would probably say an event that takes place here in town that I love, but give me an event in the world of sport that still has name cachet, that still gets headlines, but largely it's because of the greatness that it once had, and people's interest in it now is like, yeah, okay.
Monaco.
Okay. Wimbledon's probably up there, right? So you can have in your mind the idea, the perception that something is gigantic and great. And then when you see it, you're like, yeah, I think it's almost nostalgically that I'm holding on to that greatness. Then there are other events that you assume are just resting on their laurels, and then you go and you watch it or you see it and you go, I was totally asleep on this. And this is something everyone should do. And that's what I witnessed last night. And I'll get into it coming up later in the show. But I will give my breakdown, and it speaks more than just event. It's basically a story about who in Indiana we are to a great extent and what makes this place unique. And I witnessed it last night, and it was awesome. But before we get to that, plenty to get to today. We will begin with, and I know the guys were talking about it a lot this morning, it is reality, and it's the world that we live in today that the big story in the world of sport can center around a 17 to 18-year-old. And again, it's about sometimes representation. Now, football recruiting and recruiting in sport in general is an inexact science. You would obviously rather put yourself in position to get elite players, five-star players, than not get them, right? Obviously. You would rather, if you just won a national championship and you had a historic run on a team with no 3-stars, to use that term, that's kind of the odd situation here with Indiana. In other words, Indiana today is going to find out if they are going to land the biggest recruit in the history of the program from a football standpoint. Monchon Sales, the 6'5", 195-pound wide receiver from Lawrence North. He's the number one wide receiver in America. He is widely regarded at the very least, top 10 recruit. Some would say maybe even the number one recruit in America, regardless of position. And Indiana has never been in that sort of a category. You know what? I say that. I'd have to look. Bobar Zalauskas was pretty big as a defensive lineman. But from an elite standpoint in terms of playmaking, specialty position, there has been, they've had great players, but nothing like coming in a 5-star number one consensus player. And while you can sit here and say you have to get the guy for that reason, you just won a national championship with a team that had no higher than a 3-star on it. And that was their entire selling point. That was their entire – you changed the identity a little bit in a good way. I'm not saying in a bad way. But, I go back to, because I talk about it all the time, when the Chicago Cubs were on the cusp of winning the World Series, I said on the radio, look, I'm telling you, this will be awesome if they win. But it completely changes the identity of the Chicago Cub fan base. And just the other day, my buddy Sean Kroll on social media was like, why do the Cubs fans get so much hate? And I'm like, I'll tell you why. Because I told you, once they won a World Series, you're just another fan base, and you happen to be one of the 3 biggest in baseball. So therefore, naturally speaking, there's going to be resentment about Cub fans. That comes with being popular, right? I mean, it's a good thing, not a bad thing. But you are no longer forever. Cub fans were the lovable losers, right? The Cubs were the lovable losers, so their fans, everybody loved it and had mad props for them because they never won anything and they were still there. That changes now, right? The same is kind of true with Indiana football. If you're going out and you're landing these kinds of players, and you would rather have that than not, don't get me wrong, but the twofold of it is, number one, it does change the way now you're going to be perceived and the way you're going to be ingested by people. Indiana fans shouldn't worry about that. Bring on the hate. But it does change the narrative about your program if now all of a sudden you're going in with that. And it takes away a little bit of that, we're the band of misfits. We're the band of cast-offs. We're the band of players that nobody else gave a chance. Let's win this for all the small schools that never had a chance to get here. That goes away now. But more so, if for whatever reason, and he's certainly good for him, if Monchon Sales decides that Texas or Ohio State or Alabama or whatever is a better fit for him, LSU, then so be it. If you're Indiana, you go, well, I mean, we just won with a kid from his same high school that was not a 5-star recruit, and Omar Cooper, who is a first-round pick now. So they can develop players there. But recruiting is an inexact science, and I would remind people that are diehard Indiana fans that are holding their breath today and thinking that the fate of their program is in the balance here, simply my reminder, most of you when he was a junior in high school had never heard of Calbert Chaney, and most of you did bat flips all the way down to Evansville when Delray Brooks committed. It's an inexact science. Totally inexact science. Fever in action tonight, correct, Eddie?
Tonight indeed, Jake, and tomorrow night.
They are taking on, now you would think that tonight taking on Seattle, that it's a chance for them really to get back on the right side of things here, because Seattle is the worst team in the WNBA. And I know that it's not like the Fever are in a skid, but coming off that disappointment against Golden State, where I think there was a lot of hope and expectation that they could get things righted, coming off of, not righted, that's keep things righted, because they were coming off a big win, coming off that road trip, and Golden State is very, very good. And I think there was, certainly from my standpoint, there was this hope that, like, okay, if they can get this one heading into this homestand, then it's really good for them. And they obviously were not able to get that. Golden State's very, very good. But Seattle, one would assume, is a game that they should be able to get tonight.
Yeah, 100%. Caitlin Clark listed as probable with that back injury, Jake, and Aaliyah Boston, I think, is questionable with a lower leg injury. So if you remember last week, when they had the back-to-back, it was Los Angeles and then Phoenix. Aaliyah Boston did not play in the first game. Caitlin Clark did. And then in game number 2, the following night, Caitlin Clark did not play, but Aaliyah Boston did play. So are they going to go with this recipe again, where tonight you see Caitlin Clark on the floor against the worst team in the W, and you don't see Aaliyah Boston, but you see Aaliyah tomorrow night against the New York Liberty, and you don't see Caitlin Clark?
Doesn't it feel like if there's a game, Caitlin Clark was wearing and we've seen this, right? We've seen it with Tyrese Halliburton.
Yep.
Wearing the back support, I'll use that word.
And that thick cushion to sit on?
Yeah. So doesn't it feel like, though, if she, and I know that people are going to over-speculate it, but if she needs another day of rest, this would be one. You don't take anybody for granted. I'm not saying that. But certainly it feels like this is a game they could get if they were not at full strength, right?
Yeah, I would agree with you there. But at the same time, I mean, you need to get Caitlin on the floor, and hopefully that you're going up against it, and hopefully going up against an inferior opponent tonight could maybe get her back on track. She is 3 for 19, I think, since returning from the 2-game absence with that back injury from 3-point range. So hopefully, the thought here is that maybe we let her go out there and be the player that ignites the offense, both as a facilitator and as a scorer, to get her back on track and get her confidence back up and see the ball go through the hoop a couple times.
I actually wonder, does Adam Silver listen to this program? It almost feels to me like Adam Silver listens to this program. Let me read you a couple of quotes when we're talking about Caitlin Clark, okay? The Indianapolis Star, Dana Hunsinger-Benbow notably, has a column currently about Adam Silver and talking about Caitlin Clark, okay? Quote, he had these quotes that he mentioned at the CNBC Game Plan Summit in New York City. Quote, she's become a bit of a political football in this country, and I think it's incredibly unfair to her. And he goes on to talk about just I think that ultimately the issues around Caitlin Clark are not largely about officiating, and that particular incident, talking about the incident where she was suspended, is not about whether, or not suspended, but given a technical, is not about whether a foul should have been called at the time in the game or whether that was ultimately a flagrant on review. It's become a political ping pong with her, end quote, from Adam Silver. It's become political ping pong with her. He later went on to say that he feels essentially that there is a lot of noise around her at no fault of hers. Does that sound in any way, shape, or form to you, Eddie, remotely familiar in any way, shape, or form?
Nope, not at all.
Honestly.
I haven't heard that before.
We've only been saying it on this show for like 3 straight weeks.
Really? Hadn't noticed.
Honestly.
Yes, honestly, yes.
I mean, it doesn't make me some genius. You know what I mean? But that's the thing that I've been saying about her that is the one challenging thing at no fault of hers or the Fever. He is exactly right. I believe the word I used was she is the pillar of political and social commentary and argument in multiple cases of people that are debating against one another, both using her as some sort of a pawn, to use Stephanie White's terms. And when you get involved in that sort of a thing, then everything is magnified and magnetized towards this discussion that becomes very challenging to overlook. And it's at no fault of anyone within that organization. It's the byproduct of being an elite player. And, Caitlin Clark, to a great extent, represents and illustrates two people that yesterday there were a lot of eyes on as well. And that is, we talked about the fact that she wears the back support and the padded seat lately because of the lower back issue. We've seen that with Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton had that injury, and again, every body is different, physically speaking. Everyone is different. I get that. But having said that, you worry because sometimes those sorts of injuries nag and they can facilitate towards other injury. Was Tyrese Halliburton's leg injury the byproduct of a way that he was moving differently because of his lower back? Probably not. I don't know that you can dismiss it, but probably not. But you can take things and see them as precedent, and thus it becomes, worrisome for you. And Caitlin Clark and Tyrese Halliburton have a lot in common as well, aside from the fact that they're both dynamic players from Iowa, all of those things, or at least collegiately from the state of Iowa. But they also represent the transcendence of franchises into atmospheres that previously perhaps those franchises were not relevant. And in Tyrese Halliburton's case, it is the fact that he is hosting, podcasts or summits and et cetera with LeBron James, who he played on Team USA with. LeBron James, who a lot like Caitlin Clark, transcends their sport into this marketing juggernaut. And when people talk about, I wouldn't want LeBron on my team, you would be upset about that for like 5 minutes until your team becomes literally the biggest marketing machine within the NBA. Everywhere that you go, and his jersey selling and Pacers, and all of a sudden, when you talk about the Pacers being a middle market franchise, it's like, well, they're not anymore because they have the most famous player on the planet on their team, and the same guy that has owned two different Cavs jerseys, a Lakers jersey, and a Heat jersey is now going out and buying a Pacers jersey. But yesterday, Tyrese Halliburton basically begged for LeBron James to announce where it is that he is playing, and LeBron James continued to draw it out, and he's entering into Aaron Rodgers' annoying category, but nonetheless, dynamic talent. All we learned is that Tyrese Halliburton apparently asked LeBron to play for Indiana, and LeBron James sent back 2 laughing emojis, correct?
Yep.
Just remind you of your days at Decatur Central by chance?
Why would it remind me of my days at Decatur Central?
Hey, would you like to go to prom?
No. You kidding me? Any person I asked, they had the lucky privilege of going with one Eddie Garrison. Come on now, Jake.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. What were you, Easy E.G.? Is that what your name was? Just like laid back? Just life was easy for you?
Easy E, yeah.
Easy E, okay.
Yeah.
Do you know Easy E's real name, by the way?
No.
Eric Wright. Just so you know.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. We loved him, but God loved him more. That's what his headstone says. Not that I know, because I sought it out one time during a flight delay in Los Angeles and went and found the grave of Eazy-E, but I can tell you that's what it said. But nonetheless, yesterday, Eddie, your takeaway from what news did or did not come from the Tyrese Halliburton and LeBron James summit. Do you definitively and emphatically now say, yeah, there's no way he's coming to Indiana?
I said it before you tried to, sway me, because I didn't see it happening at all. Like, not even remotely possible.
Why?
Well, when, again, his agent has his own podcast, and his agent is walking through all the options LeBron has, and he's putting it all on a whiteboard for everyone to see on the pros and the cons of each team in each city. And there's not one mention of Indiana to me that's just like, okay, it's not even a topic of discussion.
But again,
because this is all Rich Paul This is Rich Paul's decision. LeBron is letting him make the choice for him. So at the end of the day, Rich Paul is going to be the one that decides where LeBron is going.
Well, in that case, he's going to Cleveland, which is pretty much what I've thought all along. But all I was saying was there is not a 0% chance. I keep, and I will still say there is a 1% chance. Now, it's probably, but here's the thing. Clearly, Tyrese Halliburton thought it was at least worth asking the question, right?
Well, yes.
I go back to when, and sometimes it is a curse. It's hard sometimes because certain things to me do not seem long ago. They don't seem that far back. And the years don't seem very drawn out to me sometimes. I think about something, and you probably hear me say it here, where I'm like, no, that was like 3 years ago, and it was 10 years ago. And LeBron's the first big, I remember vividly, I had to live it, the entire summer of the decision and all of that. The one thing that jumps out at me in recollection of that more than anything else is the fact that Miami kind of seemingly came out of nowhere. It literally was, no, it's New York. I know that Miami was one of them he had on his list where he did the 2 hours or whatever. But it literally was like, no, he's going to New York, Chicago, staying in Cleveland, or possibly the Clipper. And then I think it was either the day before or the day of when Stephen A. Smith, which kind of catapulted Stephen A. Smith also from NBA Philadelphia Inquirer writer to, holy cow. Stephen A. Smith is the one that said Miami has emerged as a late possibility here, and and then that afternoon is when he made his announcement. So that's simply my point. Is I do think that the drama and the theater of it is part at this point of the allure for him. So I don't think you can rule out any franchise definitively. Is all I'm saying. Now I think probably in the end he ends up staying at home and going back to Cleveland, and Cleveland actually is in a good situation in terms of being able to, to get him and acquire him, no doubt. I'm also curious of this. Lori Lindsey going to join us here coming up in just a minute. With the World Cup final coming up this weekend, and the semifinal for that matter, but if you had to gauge it, Eddie, on a scale, and I'm going to ask you two-part questions here. Number one, on a 1 to 10 scale, what would you say was the average American sport fans' level of World Cup interest on the eve of the United States taking on Belgium?
Probably the highest it's ever been.
Understood. But on a 1 to 10 scale, what would you put that number?
10.
The average sports fan.
10.
Okay, I would say 8, right?
I only say 10 because there's not a lot going on in the sports world.
Understood. But there were still plenty of people that were like, yeah, that's fine. In other words, a 10 would mean like every person you saw walking down the street had their face painted red, white, and blue. I think there were people that were like, it's cool, but they weren't like, as soon as the United States got down, whatever it was, 2-0, they're like, yeah, it's over, and they went on to do something else.
Well, yeah, but you're asking me about the level of anticipation going into the match, not in the match itself.
Again, let me rephrase. The overall, if you think it's a 10, that's fine. I would disagree with that, but the overall level of interest in the World Cup tournament for the average American sports fan, on average, so you stop 1,000 people and you say, on a 1 to 10 scale, what is your level of interest in the World Cup tournament in total? And those 1,000 people, the average score that you get, not just the American team, but while the Americans were still alive, what would the average score be? You think it is a 10?
Probably close.
Okay. So then what do you think it is right now?
4.
You think it dipped that much? That's the point of my asking is, do you think it dipped 60%?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. I'm curious. I'm curious to see, IndyCar this weekend is in Nashville, and it is directly following the World Cup final. And there is a contingency plan, as I understand it, should the World Cup final go into extra play or whatever it may be, if it runs over, then it will delay the start of the IndyCar broadcast. The IndyCar race, I think. They'll hold the race until the broadcast window begins. Maybe that's weather dependent. Maybe if they have to move it up because there's a chance of rain in Nashville, I don't know. But it was a huge, and I still think is a huge windfall for IndyCar, for example, to be going right off of the heels of that. But what is the actual number going to be? I'm very curious to see what the number is going to be. Obviously, if the United States was in it, it would be like record-setting, unbelievable. But, and we know that that's not going to be the case because the United States is. But I still think there's going to be a ton of viewership just because people have followed the tournament even casually, and maybe they weaned off once the United States was out, but now they're like, well, I did watch some of that tournament, so I will glance in and peek in on what's going on. It's one of the things that we can discuss with Lori Lindsey. She's going to join us on the other side, and an always fun game to play, Eddie. She tells me she's going to be in an airport. We got to guess where it is that she's flying. That's one of the fun games to play on this, and we're going to get a scouting report from her on the Oasis playlist.
You think she's going to East Rutherford?
Well, she lives in Philly, so she would just take the train.
Okay, so then maybe she's going to Miami.
Bingo. I think that's it. I think she's going to the semifinals. But we'll find out. Other side, Lori Lindsey joins us, of course, World Cup participant herself and Fox analyst when it comes to soccer. Return visit to the program next. Hey there, Jake Quarry for Chicago's Pizza. You know what? They're getting ready right now. Making the fresh hand-rolled breadsticks. Preparing that dough for the best pizza that you're going to have as part of the Chicago's Pizza lunch buffet, which gets underway in just over 30 minutes. You're thinking about lunch right now? Chicago's Pizza. Think about this. Traditional pizza, deep dish pizza, the breadsticks that are fresh right there, dessert pizza for that matter, and the salad bar with all the fixings so fresh right there before your very eyes and every dressing you can imagine. You get all that and a soft drink at the Chicago's Pizza lunch buffet. And look, I think you people know by now that I bleed the torch. I'm Indiana through and through. And that's what I love about Chicago's Pizza. Aside from the fact that there's a pizza story told in every slice, it's the fact that Chicago's Pizza is homegrown. It's Hoosier through and through. Started right here in Indiana in 1979. A couple of guys from southern Indiana that said, you know what, let's start a business together. Let's do it. And let's do it by having a business that cares about their community. And that's what you get from Chicago's Pizza. The very best in terms of the quality of food you're getting, but also in terms of the quality of people. And that's what you want when you're choosing where to dine, whether it be for lunch today for the lunch buffet until 1:30, or whether it be the family meal deal, 2 medium, 1 topping pizzas, and a fresh order of breadsticks for just $25. Perfect night, Friday night. Why not make it a pizza night? Chicago's Pizza. Find a location near you at chicagospizza.com.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Ten o'clock hour, halfway through it here on a Friday. A feel-good Franciscan Health, good for the heart Friday, as a matter of fact. We will get to that in about an hour from now. World Cup is now into its final 2 matches. It will be in semifinal number 1. Now, I got a couple of World Cup facts for you here, Eddie. Because, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm what they call prepared as a broadcaster, okay? We have breaking news for Eddie, yes.
Jake Query is prepared as a broadcaster.
Yes, that is correct. For example, Argentina trying to become the first repeat winner since Brazil in 1962. They won it in 58 and 62. Only 2 nations have won the World Cup in back-to-back World Cups. Italy did it also in 1934 and 38. Spain is in search of their 2nd World Cup title. Argentina, it would be their 4th. 3 o'clock on Sunday, they will match up. And then, of course, the other semifinal is that of England and France. That is tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Lori Lindsey has played for the United States in the World Cup. She joins us now. She also has been, wow, Eddie, I looked up at the screen. I thought she was joining us on Zoom. You just simply have the photo there. I got worried because I didn't wear my Guns N' Roses t-shirt, and she's going to out me. But she joins us now from an airport to discuss the World Cup. Lori, we're going to begin with guessing where you're traveling. Are you ready for that?
Okay, I am. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you. Are you whispering? Are you hiding? Be honest.
No, I'm in the lounge. Because I'm a frequent traveler, so it's very posh around here. Yes. Okay. Let me hear your guesses.
Let me ask you: are they going with buffet style in the lounge, or are you just going with coffee? What are we doing in the lounge?
No, I was hungry this morning. Usually, I absolutely just go with coffee, but this morning I was like, "Give me all the food."
Okay. So we're going to do this. We're going to begin with this hint question. Your flight, if you don't mind me asking, your flight is at approximately what time, if it goes off on time?
Yeah, 11:45.
11:45. Okay, and you will land at your destination at approximately what time?
4 p.m. Eastern. So 11:45 it takes off, and I land at 4 p.m. Eastern.
You, my friend, Eddie was guessing that you were heading to Miami for the semifinal. Then we were thinking maybe you were going to the final, and I thought, well, no, she could ride her bike from Philadelphia to East Rutherford, so that wouldn't be hard. I'm going to guess that you are actually going to the West Coast, and you are going to Pasadena. I don't know for what reason, but you're going to the Los Angeles area.
I am not. No, not quite. Do I tell you? Or
yeah. Go ahead and tell me here.
Okay, I'm going to Denver just today. We have our women's pro league. The NWSL, we have a game there tomorrow. So noon local, and so then I'll fly back. And my fingers are still crossed to be going to the final, but it is not yet 100%. So we will see.
Okay.
But like you said, I could ride my bike.
Fair. Yeah, I was going to say you could ride your bike there. Fair enough. Okay, and you have all that food from the lounge as energy, so that's good. Okay, let's begin with this. The final itself. And I know that this is the most elementary of questions. At this point, obviously, we know who both teams are, and I would assume there's no wrinkle that goes into this. How much does the mentality of a professional athlete in terms of the tightness change when you know everything that is at stake? Or is that non-existent when you get to this level, speaking of nerves?
Oh, no, it's there. I mean, you're well aware that this is the biggest or not one of the biggest games of your life. So, no, but it's just about, I think the difference is about channeling that emotion, using it to your advantage, because there's going to be nerves, there's going to be excitement. Essentially, the entire world is going to be watching this game. So it's just about using that to the best of your ability instead of, as you mentioned, instead of it making it like very tight and then you can't perform at your highest level. But players like Messi, players who are on the Spain team, have played in huge games before, and obviously Messi and company in Argentina won it in 2022. So, I think most of these players will be more excited, and it's just about utilizing that throughout the 90 minutes.
By
90
the way,
minutes plus, I should say.
Lori, I got to tell you, I'm neither a dad nor a soccer aficionado, but the other day I learned a soccer dad joke, And I know that you know the soccer dad joke, but I'm going to repeat it, and then I want you to pretend as though you've never heard the joke before, like it's really funny. Okay? Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay, I'm very proud of
ready.
this one. Do you know why Ronaldo has never been asked to clean his bedroom?
No.
Because he's never been messy.
It's perfect. It is actually perfect.
It's not bad, is it? That's not bad for.
No,
I
it's
mean,
good.
you know. But
It
what
is
is it?
good. Actually, I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, it's not bad, right? If you want to use that, you can.
Yeah. I will.
What is it about the game itself in any sport? And I've talked a lot about this. You know, Messi is remarkable because, just for example, if you look at what Argentina did to get themselves to this point, and it's happened numerous times now, obviously, they're able to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. And even if Messi is not the one that is scoring, he is facilitating for it to happen. What is it about great players like that where the great moment always seems to find them, or vice versa?
I think it's best summed up with his nickname, Messi Magic, because he's incredible, right? It's like a player that outside of Diego Maradona that we have never seen before, in the sense that his low sense of gravity, how the ball sticks to his feet, he attracts attention to play. He attracts defenders to him. That opens up space for others. But I think in that final assist that we saw in the semifinals, where everybody wants to push him and make it predictable for themselves to his left foot, because that's the foot that he wants to be on. But you think he's going to go that way, in the last second, he uses his right foot to lay off a dime like that. So, one, he's predictable, but within that, he's unpredictable, because when he needs it most, he has something else in his back pocket, which is that right foot and the dime of a cross that landed right to his teammate's head. So, yeah, it's easy to explain, but it's not.
Well, this is what always has both mystified and fascinated me. Do great players like that know that they have a trick up their sleeve and they're just waiting for the right moment? Or is it more so that they have such an arsenal in their bag of tricks that they don't even need to think about it, and it instinctively comes that they naturally know how to do the opposite of what is anticipated?
Yeah, the latter. I mean, his entire game is instinctual, and he's just playing the feel of it. I mean, as you can see, I think the thing about Messi that has been incredible is how 39 years old, and he just continues to, in some ways, reinvent himself. I use that in quotes, because he's finding ways to still make himself so impactful in these games. And he ran a lot in that England game. I think the most that he had in any other game so far in this World Cup. But we've seen him walk a lot, and then when they need it most, he can turn it on. Change of pace is incredible. But I think all players who are playing at that level, regardless of the sport, are, yes, it's instinctual, it's a feel, and there's a confidence about what they're doing. They know that, hey, I'll put this team on my shoulders and let's go. Here we go.
Does Spain have the defense to corral that?
Yes, but I would say what they also have is their ability to keep possession in some other teams. And I think the hope for them is that they don't have to corral that they will control the game through possession, through the way that they connect play, but then the shape when they are in possession allows them to be able to quickly win the ball back, and that's what we saw against France. Like, as soon as that ball was turned over in possession, they were in such good positions to deny a forward pass or deny open space for France to be able to break out in like transitional moments. And because they knew the last thing they want to do is get into a foot race with France, and that's the same with this Argentina team. That is exactly what Spain's going to have to do. But I think the biggest difference is Spain also has the desire to control the game, in a sense. If they go up 1-0, much like we saw against France, they will hunt for that other goal. They won't just be content and sit back. And I think that's their greatest power in this game.
Lori Lindsey is our guest. She's on the Swab Men's 2-in-1 hotline. Lori, I wanted to ask if you could kind of summarize this, and it's kind of a loaded question, okay?
Okay.
When you played for Team USA, and and you would put on that jersey and you see the crest of the United States, it would be my assumption that the combination of being caught up in the moment, knowing that you've got a big match in front of you, probably youth also, probably weighs in where you don't in that moment totally absorb it. And it's not until after the fact when you can truly grasp the honor that was there and the rarity that was bestowed upon you. Is that a fair assessment of the emotion that goes into playing at that level for that representation?
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's so many emotions, like relief in some way for all the hours and the work and all the years that you put in. Then you're looking at all your teammates and just the excitement you have for them, but also to be standing next to them. The responsibility it feels like. The responsibility to entertain as well and have fun, and the reason why you're there putting on that jersey. So yes, all the feelings. I do think though it's about trying to be as present as possible, but some of that you can't really fully understand until years after, right? And to be able to reflect upon what that meant. So yes, staying in the moment, being present, but also to really fully understand and feel exactly what it meant is typically, I feel like, years later.
Now, did France and England go all in for this, the third place game, or is this kind of like the bowl game where suddenly Alabama sends nobody because it's the Outback Bowl?
I wouldn't be surprised if they actually rotate players, but I think it's a mix because it's a real struggle to get up for that third place game, to get excited, to say, hey, listen, after having to deal with all the emotions of the defeat and not playing in the final. But at the same time, you're at the World Cup and you're vying for that third place spot. And so these guys are professionals. They know what's at stake. So it's a mix, right? It's a real challenge to get excited and perform and be up for that game emotionally. But you also know what's at hand. And once again, just like the previous question, you're putting on the jersey, you're putting on the crest, and you want to represent that to your best ability.
Lori Lindsey, our guest, Suave Men's 2-in-1 Hotline. All right, Lori, truth serum time, okay? I can't see your face on the Zoom, so I don't know if you're lying to me. And be honest, I will not be offended. You have or have not gotten a chance to dive into the Britpop Oasis playlist? Oh,
I did. Yes, I did. Even though it took me a little bit to respond to you, I did it.
Okay.
Do I give you my top three?
Yeah. Oh, this is outstanding, Eddie. How about this for prep, Eddie? Huh? Put that in your non-pipe, prep pipe and smoke it, Eddie. All right, here we go. Your top three. I like this. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go 3-1 if you could. 3-1.
Okay. Well, listen, I was going to put Don't Look Back in Anger, but I've already mentioned that in our previous conversation. So
okay.
I'm scrapping that one, okay, just to give a free one here. But 3-1, I'm going with Songbird.
Okay.
Sorry, The Shock of the Lightning, Songbird, and then Hello.
Hello is a great song.
3-1. Yeah, but listen, I hadn't heard Bittersweet Symphony in a long time by The Verve, and I was loving that. That was on there. For all the listeners, that was on there too.
Listen.
There's a few Verve songs on there.
So Richard Ashcroft, who's the lead singer of The Verve, he opened for Oasis when I saw them a year ago. And to see him sing Bittersweet Symphony, not for me per se, but for all of the people in England, that is like their anthem, so to speak. It's kind of their country roads,
Yeah.
I guess you'd say. It was like a theological experience. I mean, it truly was. It was a pleasure and an honor to watch it, and so therefore there's a special nature to it. But Hello is a fabulous song. The fact that you picked that, and that says to me that what you got there in the airport, you got brain food this morning. You got brain food clearly because the noggin's working, right?
I need to dissect that a little bit because I know you had it on there twice, like one that was live and then the one that remastered. Do you have a preference in that one?
The live. I think the live is better.
Yes, always. Yeah.
The live.
Well, not always. I wouldn't say always, but majority of the time. Yeah. Also, the Stone Roses. I know them, but I wouldn't be able to pick out their songs. But I also commentate for Major League Soccer, and I'm on this group thread or group text message with all these other guys that are commentators in Major League Soccer, and one of my buddies, Danny Higginbottom, he's a Brit, and that's his favorite band, the Stone Roses. So he'll be happy that I know a song now.
See, that's what I'm doing.
One song.
Listen, we're bonding friendships on this program. That's what we do, Lori.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Window or aisle seat?
Yeah.
Which are you? Are you a window or aisle seat person here in an hour?
Okay, well, listen, if I'm in first class, which makes me sound really bougie, then I'm always going with the window.
Okay.
But if I'm in the economy or however, then I'm going with the aisle.
Yeah, I agree. Especially if it's over 2 hours, because you never know when you might need to get up and walk around. You don't want to climb over somebody that's sleeping, and etc.
Exactly.
We'll let you get back to the second serving of yogurt, and then safe travels to you. And we will play some of your. We are going to play, Eddie. It is now a declaration on the program. She just listed our next 4 reentry songs in order right there. Eddie gives the thumbs up. Lori, safe travels. Appreciate it. All right.
Yeah, appreciate you. Thanks for my playlist, and speak soon.
All right, sounds good. Lori Lindsey joining us on the program. We come back. There's something yesterday I witnessed here in Indiana that everyone should. I will let you know what it is next.
Lindsey and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
So we put a reprieve for the moment on Lori Lindsey's bounce back song so we can play this. Perfectly timed by you, Eddie. And I've only got a couple minutes. Kevin Bowen going to join us coming up here in just a minute. So let me simply say this. You know, I do love the history of Indiana. I love the history just of towns and culture and people and all of it. And there was a young girl in the East Coast by the name of Frances Slocum. Frances Slocum back in the 19th century was kidnapped by members of the Delaware Indian tribe. And I don't know the exact circumstances or reasoning or whatever it may be, but she eventually, with that tribe, moved and was brought into the settlement of the Delaware Indian in north central Indiana, kind of on the banks of the Wabash River. And her name within that culture became McConaughey. You've probably heard that name throughout Indiana. And when she was an adult, her siblings eventually located and found her. And even though she was elated to be reunited with her family, she told them that she actually preferred to stay within her settlement in the area where she would ultimately pass and is still in her resting place near Peru, Indiana. And she decided that she wanted to stay in Peru, did McConaughey, Frances Slocum. And staying in Peru seemed to be the precursor, I guess, to a pattern. And that pattern was also true for back in the early 20th century, really the late 19th century and early 20th century. One thing that Peru, Indiana was known for, aside from being on right there the cusp of the Wabash River, it was also known for, and aside from being known for where McConaughey decided to stay, it was known for the fact that it was the crossroads of railroads. And so if you were a traveling act, a traveling group that was moving throughout the United States, eventually you were forced to stop and do a transfer near Peru, Indiana. And there happened to be an equine salesman, a guy that would sell horses, kind of like being a car dealer back in those days. And the Hagenbeck Wallace Circus, for example, which was a rival to the Ringling Brothers, they said, you know what, we can buy our horses here while we are making our train transfers as part of a traveling circus. And eventually they said, you know what, we've got all this stuff that we're traveling with, and this is the area where we have to, no matter what in our travel, we have to stop here and unload everything. Maybe we should store our stuff and our animals and everything else here for the winter. And so that circus began doing that in the winter. And soon other circuses noticed it, and they became like McConaughey. They said, maybe we'll stay in Peru. And so they built facilities to facilitate the circus and to store things for the circus. And the town of Peru eventually said, you know what? If all of these people that work in a circus are going to spend their winter time here, maybe we could get some exercise and get involved by learning some circus acts while they're dwelling here in the off season. And that began a tradition that last night I went to go see their 66th presentation of it in its current state. And that is the largest amateur circus in the world and in the country that takes place in Peru. And Kevin Bowen's going to join us in just a couple of minutes. But before he does, off the top here, I want to tell you what could be learned that I learned last night, and an apology to the people of Peru and Indiana that took me this long to learn it, because it was awesome. And I'll tell you what it was, and Kevin Bowen will join us. Other side here on a Friday edition. Good for the Heart Friday. That's coming up in 35 minutes. It's The Fan. Hey there, Jake Corey for Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website. 317-353-2141 is the telephone number for Love Heating and Air. Over 100 years in Central Indiana, an official Heil Heating and Cooling dealer. The very best when it comes to customer service, 24-hour on-call maintenance. That goes without saying. And, of course, great product with that Heil Heating and Cooling dealership. That means they're coming in, putting in the very best product in your home to make sure that you are cool this time of year. And if there is any hiccup, they not only are going to take care of that and be out there with their 24-hour on-call maintenance, but they're going to be honest, too. They're not going to try to upsell you on a small job and try to turn it into a big job. I've known Love Heating and Air, the guys over there and gals, for my entire life. They treat me like family. They will do the same for you. Love Heating and Air, 317-353-2141, an official Heil Heating and Cooling dealer. A Friday in Indy, Kevin Bowen, just a couple minutes from now. It's a feel-good, good for the heart Friday, Franciscan Health, doing that bottom of the hour. But I want to get back into what happened last night. I've told you about Peru, Indiana. I had never been to Peru. I had a roommate after college, the late, great Ryan Holmes, who was a basketball coach at Center Grove, amongst other places, and just a wonderful guy. He was a native of Peru. Jeremiah Johnson, of course, native to Peru. And so I've always known of the Peru amateur circus. And I've always kind of poked fun at it, truth be told, with JJ and his Roman ladders and that kind of thing. But I always knew of the tradition of it, or at least had heard of it. And the fact that Peru called itself the amateur circus, or the circus capital of the world. The buildings in Peru, Indiana, where they stored, and the traveling circuses in the wintertime in the 19th century and into the early 20th century, they would store and warehouse all of their circus equipment in the winter. And eventually that led to the people of Peru saying, in the wintertime, why don't we learn some of the different tricks? Why don't you, while you're staying here and dwelling here, why don't you go ahead and teach us some things? And those facilities are now the Circus Hall of Fame. And I think I learned a little something about Peru last night, and about Indiana, and about who we are as a people. Because the reality is, small town America is in a tough spot. You know, a lot of the manufacturing, a lot of the industry, a lot of the commerce of small town America is long gone. You know, the days of the packed gyms, because you had people that all had a pension and a job and you know, all of those things, a lot of that's gone. None of this is a secret. You go through small town America now, and a lot of them are communities that are desperately holding on. And I think I kind of anticipated that when I went to Peru. I expected, after I passed Grissom Air Force Base and went past Kokomo and then took right off of 31 to head into town, I was expecting to see plight. I was expecting to see, quite truthfully, poverty. And I got into town, and I'm not by any means or in any way, shape, or form pretending that Peru is like a thriving community versus others in central Indiana. Square D, I think, was a major employer there. I think that may be gone. A lot of people work for Chrysler down in Kokomo. But when I got in, what I saw was a town that I looked around, and it put its best foot forward for certain, because this is their circus week, their event week. They look forward to it all year long. And I parked near the square, if you will, the courthouse, and I saw all of these people heading towards the building that houses their circus. And there were, you know, makeshift rides and elephant ear stands and all kinds of things there. But what I saw was this outpouring of people that were gathering because they were proud of where they're from. And they were putting forth an exhibition of what it is to be from Peru, Indiana, the land that Mechaniqua did not want to leave, and the land that the circuses didn't want to leave. And most places, when you go to a small town, you're like, yeah, I've been here an hour, like I'm good. I'm not going to say that I didn't want to leave. Maybe that would be overstating it. But the hospitality that I saw, the community pride that I saw, and then when I walked into the circus itself, which is in a permanently housed building that was built 65 years ago. This is the 66th year that they've done the circus itself. I walked in. This is a town of 11,000 people. There were over 200 performers in this amateur circus, all of them between the ages of 7 and 21, the vast majority of them peaking at probably 16, 17 years old. High school freshmen or sophomores, and I don't mean they're not out there juggling 3 racquetballs. I'm talking high-flying trapeze acts, Cirque du Soleil level balancing acts, 2.5 hours of nonstop, awe-inspiring performance that is an exhibition of dedication, commitment, and they start every year around January in terms of figuring out which events they want to be a part of. And then they start rehearsing in April, and they're rehearsing several hours a night. And what I saw was a town, and I looked around at the people, and there was a courteous nature of the people of Peru. There was a pride of the people of Peru. There was a professionalism about the people of Peru. And I realized that the not-for-profit of the circus was as much about the heritage of what makes Peru, Indiana special and why people like McConaughey didn't want to leave, as much as it was about having programs instilled that create a discipline, a purpose, and a goal for its young people. Everything from the young tumblers at the age of 7 to the unbelievably breathtaking performance of the high school sophomores and juniors, and the entire town that watched this every single night for a week. And every performer is from Miami County. I think they just passed something that now, if you're from a neighboring county, you can participate, but that's like maybe 5 of the 200 kids. So literally the majority of kids growing up in Peru, it is just automatically known amongst them that they are going to be part of this exhibition of their town that makes their town unique. And the thing about Indiana is we are a state that, quite frankly, a lot of us that live here, even though we have the chance to go to maybe a New York or a California or other places that are bigger, better, more exciting, better weather, we have a pride about it that makes us not really want to leave. And I was embarrassed on my drive home to think about the fact that I had never before ventured up to Peru to watch the circus. I'd always heard of it, maybe somewhat kind of joked about it, but I felt like I had a better understanding of the true Hoosier heritage and pride by having witnessed that last night. And I cannot state heavily enough for everybody from Indiana how much you would enjoy if you go up next year. It still is taking place for 2 more nights. Jeremiah is going to be the master of ceremonies or the grand marshal of their parade that takes place on Saturday. And it was awesome, and I would strongly suggest and recommend that anybody from Central Indiana next year put it on their calendar to go up, get an elephant ear, walk down Main Street, go in, even if you don't stay for all 2.5 hours, just watch what is being performed by people who are proud of who they are. And I think we all can learn from, even in the most simplistic form, the element and the beauty of a pride of your work and your community being on display. And I love Indiana, and that was something that the state of Indiana should be extremely proud of. No question about it. There is the chance that a kid from Indiana is going to stay at home. We'll know that sometime in the next couple of hours in terms of Indiana football and their recruitment. But let's begin with Kevin Bowen by talking on the professional side of things in the NFL. Kevin joining us now from, of course, the Fan Morning Show. You hear him along with James Boyd every morning, 7 to 10 a.m. And, Kevin, I'm going to begin with the Colts side of things as we're in the last couple of weeks here before we get into training camp with something that was discussed briefly by me yesterday, and that's this. Jonathan Taylor, we forget still that Jonathan Taylor has yet to hit the age of 30, so he has not gone over that cliff, if you will, from a running back standpoint. But is Jonathan Taylor's smart play here heading into a contract year with the Colts to go ahead and get what he can now and try to demand to get this taken care of now? And I'm not saying hold out, but take a hard line in the sand, only because of the potential uncertainty of the direction of the franchise after this year, and therefore not knowing what that would mean to his value.
Well, first, thank you for all that on Peru and the circus. I thought that was excellent to listen to. So thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, as far as Taylor's concerned, you could look at it from that aspect, but honestly, I'd probably look at it, I guess, on the con list if you were Taylor. I think it's more of when does Father Time finally show up? To me, at running back, it's when does the big injury occur? Less to do with, I think, unstable organization foundation, if you will. I think Jonathan Taylor, if he has a good season, he's going to get paid. He's going to get paid playing as a Colt. He's going to get paid playing as, one of these other NFL teams that are going to, kind of covet him in free agency. So I don't look at it necessarily as that much of it. I think it's more of, do you play the injury game a little bit more? Do you feel like, what happened to you in just all the carries at Wisconsin and all the carries throughout his NFL career, does that finally start to add up? To me, him and DeForest Buckner are very similar. they've really just kind of defied the health odds in their respective NFL careers. And Buckner definitely older than Taylor, but it finally obviously got to him. That would be the question I would have if I were Taylor.
Yeah, I just think I was surprised, Kevin, truthfully, when I saw, I guess with Taylor, if you're Chris Ballard and the Colts, for example, and you go into a negotiation with him, do you look more heavily at the age? Because age in the NFL, especially at the running back position, can be kind of a magic number, or because the age is, you're optimistic because he's still a young guy. But is that an older age because of the mileage collegiately into the NFL that has been put on the tires itself? And if you are the Colts, does that give you any sort of apprehension?
Yeah, I think it's a totally fair question. But my guess is the Colts aren't as apprehensive as some would be. Now, it might just be a leverage play that the Colts try to use a little bit here whenever these negotiations ramp up. But it's a fair point to bring up because, when you compare Taylor to a guy like Jonathan, you compare Jonathan Taylor to a guy like Derrick Henry, I mean, their college careers, even the start of their NFL careers, were very different from a workload standpoint. I mean, if you go back, and I'm sure Eddie can pull up the numbers, I mean, when you look at Henry's carries at Alabama versus Taylor, I mean, Taylor had over 900 carries in 3 years at Wisconsin. I mean, Henry was a part of just that constant stable and rotation of Alabama backs. And so they didn't need to utilize him in that way. And even the first year or two, I think in Tennessee, he wasn't necessarily used to that extent there. So, again, a lot of NFL people I think would be hesitant and they would bring that up contractually, but it just seems like the Colts, running Taylor to the ground, I think it has such a negative phrase to it, but that's kind of what they did last year. I mean, they didn't really pitch count him any. They didn't really trust anybody else to have a series a half or, hell, even a series a game, it felt like at times there. So it just seems like the Colts have looked at him and said, hey, we're paying you a lot of money. You're really durable. You're really healthy. Let's see what you got. And I'm not saying that's why he tapered off last season. Obviously, there were some other circumstances, but I think at some point, Father Time usually gets to everybody, particularly at running back.
I guess we'll never know this, Kevin, but if the injury had not happened to Daniel Jones, and there's a reason I'm asking it this way, even though it's kind of an absurd thing to think about because it did not happen, what I'm about to say. If they had stayed healthy last year and they were the best team in the NFL by record for the majority of the time that Daniel Jones was under center, if they had stayed healthy and he had stayed healthy, where ultimately do you believe last year they would have hit their ceiling? How far would they have gone?
Boy, it's a great what if. We talked briefly about it this morning. If you look at the 3 games that Jones started to dip off as a player, was that his health? They had that calf, fibula injury right before the torn Achilles. Was it that, or was it the rest of the NFL saying, we have 2 months on you? We now know what your shtick is, and it's the hardest league to sustain, high-level success over the course of 17 weeks. I tend to think they would have bowed out early in the playoffs. It's pretty crazy that they missed the playoffs considering they started so well, but also, they did miss it by 3 games and miss winning the division by 5. But, yeah, I'd probably say a first-round exit. I don't know if I trust Daniel Jones in a playoff game, particularly one that likely would have been away from home.
Okay, so here's my follow-up to that. Are they a better team assuming they stay healthy, are they a better team this year than last?
Say that again?
Assuming that Daniel Jones starts and is healthy and everybody stays healthy this year, are they a better team this year than what they would have been last year in that scenario? In other words, are they better this year than a go into the playoffs in 1-game playoff? Are they a better team right now? Do they go deeper than that?
No, I don't think you can say that really at all. Now, again, the season unfolds, and if Latu takes some big jump and the cornerback duo stays healthy, you can point to some things, certainly. But, just based off additions and subtractions, I don't know how you can say that. I mean, you need instant rookie class success, and that's a lot to bank on. Now, I would say this draft class, when, we chatted or, when James and I have chatted about the draft class, I've said it, the 2026 group I think is the best football draft class Ballard has had. And I know it sounds weird to say, but you don't really have a lot of these freakish athletic trait guys that maybe didn't have a lot of college production. When you look at it, their first 2 picks were all SEC players. Bryce Betcher led the Big Ten in tackles. So, there is a lot of football evidence with this group. Now, does that mean, quicker transition, smoother transition to the NFL? Again, that's such a key ingredient, I think, to this season, having a little bit more January potential. But right now, given what they've lost, given what you're banking on, no, I can't sit there and say that. I mean, they were a historic team through the first 2 months of the season. I think we forget just how great they were. So no, I can't say that.
Well, the reason I say that is because they need to be. One would assume, would you not, Kevin, that if they don't take a step forward this year, then you're back to square one. And then you probably blow things up. And, Daniel Jones is obviously on a shorter deal. Daniel Jones is extremely important to the success of Jonathan Taylor to some extent in terms of drawing away from and then facilitating a running game that you uncork because you have the threat of a passing game. But if you are blowing it up, then you wonder about the future of both of them, and you wonder about the future of Ballard. I guess what I'm saying is, tell me why this is not something that's in quicksand. Not quicksand per se, but let's say a sand trap.
Well, I got nice work there on the British Open golf. I would say what I struggle with, and I might just throw the question to you, what in Carly Gordon's eyes means everybody's back? Is it a division title? Is it a wild card berth? Is it more than that? If you reverse this season from last year, you start off poorly but end on a high note, arrows pointing up. Daniel Jones is over a year removed from the Achilles and looks to be better. Is that enough? If the 9-8 arrow was pointing down last year, if it's now pointing up, is that enough? And again, I know a lot of people are probably having some, pretty intense no's to some of these answers. But again, we just don't know with her. So she pretty much said at the end of the year, 2 months, over 8 years in regards to Chris Ballard and why she decided to bring everybody back. So has she wiped the entire slate clean and she's only looking at what has happened since she took over, about 14 months ago? That's the unknown, I think, in a lot of this.
I don't rule this out, Kevin, in this aspect. And then let me throw you. Kevin Bowen is my guest, by the way. He's on the Swab Men's 2-1 hotline. And, of course, you hear him on the morning show and going to be out at Colts camp each day that we're out there and covering it for the station. Let me tell you my hypothesis, and then you, Kevin, can be, in the role of your folks, you can be a teacher here and grade me A to F, okay? I think this year is particularly big for Chris Ballard, not just because we're in year 10 here and people want results, but rather this is going to be the first true season. And I understand that Carly Gordon was on the sidelines and wearing the headset and involved in every meeting and all of those things. And however, I just think that when you were undergoing the transfer of power, there were so many aspects of that having nothing to do with the X's and O's of football. There was, everything from the sale of properties to the sale of the collection to understanding and getting all the ducks in a row of being an owner in general, the representation of that. I know she'd gone to owners' meetings. There were so many non-football things that I think essentially what we saw a year ago was, look, I'm trusting you to run this franchise, and then next year we'll really start to finite inventory where we are. And so if there were little things about Chris Ballard that for whatever reason were unsavory, now is the time that they would be more illuminated or witnessed than a year ago. And for that reason, and I'm not sitting here saying that those things exist, but this is the year that I think he is going to be under a much closer microscope than last, because there is more focus on the football side of it that we didn't have, understandably so, a year ago. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I'll go B- for effort here. It's Friday. We don't need to debate report cards too intently here. I would like to think, though, she was so heavily involved in previous years. I mean, she was on the sideline in previous years. She was a big part of the football side of the building, i.e. she wasn't making maybe the top decisions, but still, it's not like she was whatever, running the ice cream shop, you know, like she was heavily involved. I don't think you all of a sudden needed, you know, the unfortunate death to all of a sudden consider yourself, you know, the evaluator here. And her personality doesn't really strike me as that. Again, I understand where you're coming from, but I guess I just disagree maybe a little bit if like that was her thought process. It just seems a little cop-outy, I guess, for me.
Yeah, I get it. And you're right. I mean, she obviously, I'm not pretending that she just like moved back from Santa Monica and suddenly was like, oh, wow, I'm running you know, like that's like the kind of thing a movie would be made of, right? But it just seemed like as we learn more, we see that there was just a lot going on behind the scenes. I don't mean that in a bad way, you know, and now the focus, I'm curious to see where it goes. And one would think that for Ballard, it's got to be, the leash has to be feeling very tight, but we shall see. Lastly, I know you guys talked a lot about it, Kevin. In your estimation, I guess for Indiana, it would be symbolically huge to get the number one wide receiver in the country and a top 5, the first 5-star recruit in Indiana football history, I believe. But does that change the narrative around IU football? And can you no longer call them, you know, the band of misfits and the mighty ducks, so to speak, if now this is the arena Indiana's going to play in, which is a good thing, not a bad thing, I realize.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think sales would only kind of be more of a cherry on top of that, but I think we're kind of done with that anyways. I mean, there's, 1 or 2 JMU guys left. I know we don't know spending on every college football program, but I would venture to guess Indiana's very near the top, whatever, 10-ish program. So, yeah, I think that was the story, and it's a misnomer to say they bought a championship. I don't think that's true at all, but now, you know, they are sitting at the big boy table when it comes to finances and what Josh Hoover got and what Nick Marsh got and what some of those defensive players got. So, yeah, I think now it's, you are evaluating them on a tier that we never thought we'd evaluate IU football on.
It is crazy. There's no doubt about it. What's on tap for the weekend?
Not a whole lot. I do believe we're dabbling in the Mellencamp concert coming up tomorrow night. So we'll see how, speaking of IU football, we'll see how Mr. Cougar sounds. I will say the national championship ceremony was a little odd to me. Granted, the weather probably played a factor into that. So, yeah, I believe we are
Are you concerned, Kevin, are you concerned at all? And I mean this with all sincerity. I'm not trying to be funny at all. And I know it's worse up north. But last night, for example, when I came out of that circus in Peru, I literally, at first I thought, did they do a fireworks show out here? Because it was real, like, hazy and cloudy. And then I realized it was the wildfire smoke from Canada. And then I saw that Mellencamp canceled his concert last night due to air quality in Michigan. Now, that's further north. Any concern at all of that in terms of tomorrow night at Deer Creek, Ruoff, Verizon, whatever you want to call it? I believe it's Ruoff now.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I thought it didn't even cross my mind. I didn't realize he had canceled last night there. Yeah, I mean, it did seem like some of the images from Michigan are a lot worse. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? I'm looking up at the sky right now, and it looks pretty blue to me. But who knows what it'll be in 24 hours from now? And you know, obviously he's older, and yeah, I hope not for everyone's sake. But yeah, I guess I really hadn't given.
He sounds. Listen, the clips that I've seen, he sounds pretty good. To be honest with you, like, you know, and I, believe it or not, I've never seen him in concert, and I would love to, but I'm going to be in Nashville, unfortunately. Yeah, I've never seen him. Every time that he was like coming here when I was in college or of the age when everybody would go, there was always something I had going on. It's not that I didn't want to see him. I've never been. It's kind of like Hootie and the Blowfish. I was never able to do it, and then finally we went down to Nashville to see Hootie. But I think it'd be great. I hope you enjoy it because I think it'd be fun. I look forward to hearing how it goes.
I know. I'm definitely looking forward to it. So fingers crossed.
I appreciate it, Kevin.
All right, see you guys.
Kevin Bowen joining us on the program. When we come back, it is a Friday. It is the bottom of the 11 o'clock hour. You know what that means. It is time for a Franciscan Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday, and it's one that actually probably is going to be close to the heart of Kevin because it involves playing a sport when people might say that your odds of doing so are not great, and it's a sport Kevin loves. We'll explain. We come back here on a Friday edition of Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday on The Fan.
Barry and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You know, one of the things that I most enjoy about this radio show, there are a lot of things that we like about it. And, you know, let's face it, there really are no difficult parts of this job. And it affords us, certainly me, you know, a lot of advantages in many ways. But it does come with it, I think, responsibilities. And last night, I got a text. As a matter of fact, it was when I was on my way to Peru, I got a text, and then I was sitting at the circus, and I saw it. And it just said, "Hey, Jake, can you send me more information about the heart scan?" So I did. I sent them the website, franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles. I sent the link and just said, "Hey, you know, let me know any questions you might have about this." And the response back was, you know, "Hey, I really enjoy the show, and thanks for bringing attention to me the heart scans. Do you know what all it's able to tell and diagnose?" And I said, "Well, you know what? I'm at this circus now, but, you know, give me a call later. I'm going to be up and around." And so that's how it came to be that last night I had maybe a 15-minute conversation. I won't say the name. Well, I guess I could say the first name. It's not like anybody's going to know if I don't say the last name. So Brandon, when he called me, and he was calling on behalf of someone else who had been experiencing some weird sensations with their heart and wanted to know about the heart scan. And I said, "Yeah, look, it's $49. You could pay out of pocket, you could self-refer, but you get a heart health risk assessment with it. It's going to tell you in terms of how much calcium buildup there is, or if in fact you need to start being more proactive." And I said, "Look, I commend you for taking that step and simply asking about that and getting it set up with Franciscan Health." And of course, you can do no better, because Franciscan, number one, as we know in Indiana, for interventional coronary care and major cardiac surgery by CareChex, number one when it comes to health grades just for overall cardiovascular care. So in that regard, I was happy to know that this job facilitates towards answering those questions, and I appreciate and respect those that have heard the message about heart scans and said, "You know what, I want to get on this," so to speak. Brandon also said, "Eddie, now are you ready for this?" And this is where I thought, now, are you sure that you're not the one that needs to get checked out here? He told me the thing that he most likes about the show. You ready for this?
Yep.
He said, "I like the chemistry between you and Eddie."
Whoa.
I said, I don't know about that. You know what I mean?
Whoa.
No. The camaraderie, I believe, was the used word as well, a word that was used as well. And I said, "Yeah, I don't." At that point, I said, wait a minute. Are you sure you don't need other evaluations? But we bring you each and every Friday a feel-good story. And this story came to my attention in two ways. Number one, the other day I had to go into a store to buy a golf club because I left my golf club on the golf course. First time I've done that. Went back. I'm pretty sure I left it on 5, and no golf club. Nobody turned it in. And then I'm like, maybe I just took it out of my bag and didn't think I couldn't find it anywhere. So I thought, you know what? I got to go get a golf club. And I did see an employee at the store where I went, and I thought, well, that's cool. It's unusual. It wasn't like something that I wasn't gawking, but I thought, well, that's cool. And then it dawned on me, a conversation I had with a guy that I know by the name of John Groth. John Groth is a guy that went to DePaul. I've known him for a long time. Great guy. He interned at Channel 6 when I was working there. And he's been a long time now based out of Arizona, but he's a writer that writes for Paralympics and writes about athletes and individuals and really awe-inspiring and pretty awesome stuff about folks that, for whatever reason, whether it be paralysis, whether it be amputation, whether it be just naturally born in a certain way without a limb or limbs. And he writes about athletes that overcome that sort of a thing. And he had told me about, and I guess it just kind of went in one ear and out the other a while ago, Evan Mathias. And Evan Mathias was on John's radar because he was going to the 5th annual U.S. Adaptive Open, which is golf for basically Paralympians. In Evan's case, at a very young age, and when I say very young, I mean infant, he had challenges in terms of his physical makeup that just before he was a year old led to the amputation of both legs. So he has spent his entire life as a double amputee. Now, very early in his life, he was fitted with prosthetics. And you can imagine, I can recall being an adolescent or being a young person and growing pains, as we call them. It was more than just a show that was on television. And you could tell, and, you'd have to go buy new shoes every once in a while, a new pair of pants, whatever. Oh, you outgrew them again. And you could feel it when your body was growing. And so I thought to myself, I wonder what that must have meant and what it must have felt like to know that as your body was growing, you were outgrowing your prosthetics. And just as you get used to wearing one set, now you've got to go and get fitted for another and fitted for another. And the obstacles that would create psychologically and physically, truth be told. And in the case of Evan, it just became an obstacle that, that's not an obstacle in my life. That's rather just kind of part of who I am. And I have a great respect for that mentality, that mindset of that's part of who I am. I'm not going to be defined by that, but rather defined maybe by how I handle it. And at the age of 10, he started golfing. And certainly, golf, as I've learned, I'm not any good at it, but I believe this is my second full summer of golfing, I believe. And one thing I've learned is, you don't think this would be the case, but it has physical challenges. 18 holes of golf can be a lot. And, part of the challenge of it is the way that you square yourself, the way you balance yourself. If the ball's, obviously in an uneven plane, the way that you position your feet, your legs, all of it. And none of that held Evan back. Whether it was at Jay County High School, whether it was at Marion, right over here on the west side where he went to college, all of it, he continued that passion of golf, which he was first introduced to at the age of 10. So at the age of 10, even at the time when he was having to continue to change his prosthetics, one thing that was consistent was his passion, his desire, and his discipline to master the game of golf, which is the ultimate, of course, challenge for anybody. And if you golf, you're always trying to find the explanation on why not. Why did that ball not go the direction I wanted it to? Why did that putt not break the way I thought it would? But in the case of Evan Mathias, the why not was, why not do it? Why not continue to get better? And when my challenge physically tried to tell me I couldn't do something, I simply looked at it and said, why not? And so he went to Maryland last week for the 5th annual U.S. Adaptive Open, finishing 20th, representing the state of Indiana and representing Jay County, representing Marion, and representing his place of employment where he works, and was one of those that helped out with the golf club that I purchased. I didn't realize it was Evan when I was buying the club. It all dawned on me later, because in that element, in that moment of helping somebody find a golf club, making sure that it was fitted correctly, in that environment, Evan, as it should be, was just another employee at the store. And I didn't put two and two together that, in fact, that was the man that John had told me about. But I kind of wish I had, because I would have said to him, you know what, Evan, kudos and congratulations for having the heart, having the desire, having the discipline, and having the wherewithal to continue to move forward and say, it's not about what I don't have, it's about what I do. And that's the passion for a game and representing the state of Indiana the right way in the U.S. Adaptive Open, which is awesome. The $49 heart scan, again, is very easy to do, very easy to do. It's non-invasive. Does not take a lot of time. You get a heart health risk assessment with it from Franciscan Health, and it's going to take you maybe at the most from, depending on how far away you live, an hour out of your day. 833-238-0688 is the telephone number. That is 833-238-0688, or franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles is the website. As always, if you didn't get that information, you can text me at 317-523-9288. Brandon is proof of it. Even if it means that we chat on the phone a little after midnight, I'm all for it. I love it. I appreciate it. Even if for some reason you think there's chemistry between Eddie and myself. I find that part questionable. We come back, we'll get into what's taking place tonight at Gainbridge Fieldhouse and interesting comments from the commissioner of the NBA regarding a megastar in Indiana. All that next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
So we had on, earlier on the program, Lori Lindsey joined us. Now, the last time that she was on, Eddie, and it sounds kind of weird, I realize, but I don't know her other than when she's been on the show, but she's, obviously has that kind of personality where you feel like you know somebody. And so I said, well, hey, I'll send you some songs if you want and see what you think. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'd love it. So I did send her, I put together like 12 songs, sent it to her. And then when we had her on today, she not only had listened to it and gone through it, she listed her 4 favorite songs. So we're going to play her 4 favorite songs now through the remainder of the show. That was the first. That was the Shock of the Lightning from Oasis. I included, because at the concert that I went to, there was a song from the Stone Roses that was played and a song from the Verve that was played. She mentioned both of those, but they were not in her list. But Shock of the Lightning was her number 4. Her number 2, I think, actually. Her number 4 was Don't Look Back in Anger. Her number 3 was Songbird. And her number 1 was Hello, which is a fabulous song. Yesterday, Adam Silver, now is the time where all of these conventions are going on and obviously the Tyrese Halliburton and LeBron James, you would call it a podcast. I would say more like, look, the clues are out there, and people then were wondering if it's not Indiana, they're not trolling everybody and whatever it may be. Eddie is convinced that it is simply that Rich Paul is going to make that decision, and it's going to be Cleveland, Miami, or Philadelphia, I think were the 3 that have been mentioned, right?
Cleveland, Miami, Philadelphia, yes. And Golden State.
Golden State, yes. And that's probably the case. We'll see. But Adam Silver yesterday also was in New York, I believe it was, and he was doing a speaking engagement, and he was asked about the situation with Caitlin Clark and Alyssa Thomas and all of that took place, with the reports that it was Adam Silver was the one that basically interfered with the WNBA and said this needs to be addressed, etc. One of the things he said that I found very interesting was when he said that he feels like Caitlin Clark is, again, and I'm paraphrasing what he had to say. I could find the quote directly probably, but he said she's a pawn, is what Stephanie White has said, but she's a ping pong. That's it. That political discussion ping pongs off of her at no fault of hers, and that creates all of this other narrative around her. And literally, as he was saying it, I was thinking to myself, and I mean this flippantly, but at the same time, like half seriously, I was thinking to myself, does he listen to the show? Because that's exactly what we have been talking about. Now, that obviously doesn't make, that if nothing else illustrates just how apparent this is. It's not because it was some incredibly unique thought is what I'm getting at. I admit that. His quote, she's become a bit of a political football in this country, and I think it's incredibly unfair to her, said Adam Silver, talking about Caitlin Clark, okay? And then he went on, to talk about that incident with Alyssa Thomas, and he said, quote, let me give you a serious answer to that question. I think that ultimately the issues around Caitlin Clark are not largely about officiating, and that particular incident is not about whether a foul should have been called at that time in the game or whether that was ultimately a flagrant review. It's become political ping pong with her. And that is honestly what I think is the biggest challenge here. She is and not one thing that I'm talking about here is Caitlin Clark responsible for. And not one thing that I'm about to mention is her fault. And she is a fabulous basketball player. She's a generational basketball player. And to some extent, not even to some, to a major extent, she is a boulder in the stream basketball player in the trajectory of the WNBA and, for that matter, the Indiana Fever. And it is for that reason that, and I'm not saying this was even the case or will be the case, but not having her, if you have the chance to do so, not having her on the franchise is not an option for you from a marketing standpoint, a business standpoint, a fan base standpoint, and a wins and losses standpoint. All of those things, right? But there's a lot of noise around her. The commissioner of the NBA recognizes it. For whatever reason, and I don't know how or why it happens this way, but for whatever reason, there are certain athletes, there are certain teams, whatever, people, entertainers, that scrutiny comes their way, spotlight comes their way, and they become and transcend beyond what it is that they represent into a level of an it factor where people have a constant interest in who and what they are and what they represent. And that's where she is, quite frankly. And for that reason, two people can be debating something that has nothing to do with basketball, gender, or any of that, and somehow they both are using against one another Caitlin Clark as an illustration of their point. And that has for a while now become so loud that it's become difficult to navigate through. And I think it has impacted the Fever. Now, I think they've kind of worked through that, and I think that seemed, because people are aware of it now, I think it's kind of simmered down a little bit. But it's at no fault of her or the franchise. But when the commissioner of the NBA is saying it, then yes, I think it is clear. I saw that and I thought, okay, so it's not just in Indiana that we can see this. Scott Agness joins us. We'll talk about that, and I'll recap again a special evening last night. I'll do that coming up in about 35 minutes, Friday edition here, Query & Company on the Fan.
and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
This was from Lori Lindsey, I believe, her number 3. This is Songbird. We usually do an open that lets you know it's a Friday, but I think everybody knows that by now, right? And plus, in the summertime, doesn't every day kind of feel like Friday, Eddie?
Well, do we know people still don't think we're noon to 3 still? Like, do you think there's still a group of people out there that think we're still on at noon to 3?
That's a great point. Hi, my name is Jake Query. This is Eddie Garrison. I realize that you think
Hello.
you're listening to the start of this program, but we're actually starting hour number 3 because a couple of weeks ago we moved to 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., but we do thank you for listening to us. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, that was Eddie that just gave you the wave. I thought you did the hang loose Hawaiian thing. There you go. This is very easy to do, like the hang loose Hawaii thing.
Right, brah.
Excuse me?
Right on, brah. Hang loose.
Yeah.
Righteous.
Eddie, I got to tell you, with that brilliant tan you're working right now, you look like you just got back from Hawaii.
Thanks. Right? Thank you.
We are anticipating over the course of the next couple of hours, I don't know when it will be, but Manshawn Sales, who is the number 1 wide receiver in America, is expected to announce his college decision. Indiana's in that mix, so too a lot of people believe it's going to be Indiana. He would be the biggest recruit in Indiana football history. But again, I want to go back to what I said earlier. That would be wonderful, and symbolically it would show that Indiana is indeed cemented as an upper echelon program in college football, which is still extremely surreal to think. I mean, they are the defending national champion, which again is surreal to say. But they were the band of misfits. They were the cast-offs. That changes a little bit now as you elevate and escalate your recruiting profile, as you should. But how much does that then change the way that, as you're coaching them and et cetera, the way that you move forward when you no longer are, your identity is a little bit different? And we'll let you know once Sales announces, once we hear it, where it is that he is headed and whether Indiana, as many believe it to be, is going to be the selection. Fever in action tonight. They are taking on Seattle. That is usually, for the WNBA, pretty good medicine. Seattle coming in at 6-20 in this matchup. Joining us now on the Schwab Men's 2-1 hotline, he is with Fieldhouse Files, Scott Agness joining us. Scott, before we get to the Fever, I'll begin by asking you the Pacers question, and that is, I know yesterday, and I've talked plenty about it, and I know that I'm in the minority on this. I think it's at the cap a 1% chance that LeBron James would decide to team up with Tyrese Halliburton for the last, say, 2 to 3 years of his career. But yesterday, I know you were paying attention to the conversation between the two of them. Aside from that, from a Halliburton standpoint, in terms of the way that he looked, his mentality, the things that he said, and et cetera, what were, if anything, your major takeaways from that conversation?
Yeah, good afternoon, Jake. I think the number one thing for me is the fact that Halliburton is in LeBron's universe now, going back to Team USA a couple years ago. Remember, this is the guy, among many, obviously, that idolized LeBron. LeBron was his guy, just like it is with Caitlin Clark. And so for him to now talk about being buddies with him, to talk about texting him, trying to recruit him, that speaks, I think, a lot about the growth as a player and a human that Tyrese has made. Now, up on the stage, he does what he does best. He's personable. He's funny. He's timely. He knows the storylines, right? So several times throughout, Jake, the conversation there at Fanatics Fest, he would reference, time for a decision? Are we making a decision? And then he gets kind of that WWE aspect where he knows the storyline and leans into it heavily, much like we saw that tweet the day leading up to it, which is another brilliant marketing for him.
Do you believe, from the LeBron standpoint, and I know he kind of was playing up, was he not also, Scott, the theatrics of it, right? And it's funny because, and I have a great deal of admiration and respect for LeBron James. I do. And I know that's an unpopular thing to say in Indianapolis, perhaps, but he does understand the theatrics of it, which is a little unique because at this point he needs no more LeBron James theatrics. It's not like he's trying to build his brand, right? But he did draw this out, did he not? Is he entering into Aaron Rodgers' level of annoyance?
No, not even close. I don't think so. No.
Yeah, how can you, right?
I think the uniqueness about this, number one, Jake, is it's been defined by he wants to go somewhere where he can find happiness. Well, what happiness is for me and him and you might be all different things. So it's hard for us to accurately maybe pinpoint and discuss what that means to him. We also don't fundamentally know what kind of pay cut he's willing to take. He has not said that. I think others have spoken for him that he's willing to take less. I'm not jumping to the conclusion, Jake, that that means a minimum deal either. But reality is it may be headed that way, which would be a substantial change from a guy that his first 8 years, even down in Miami, was not the highest paid player. Then after that, ever since, had always been the highest paid player on his team. Now, though, I will say the overwhelming thing that I took from that conversation, Jake, was that he almost hinted at a couple more years. He goes, I got to decide where I want to go for a few more years. I thought we all generally felt like maybe this was it. It truly was one last dance, and I think he changed my perspective on that.
I mean, the thing that's amazing, Scott, and I realize sitting here in the noon hour on a Friday talk show in Indianapolis, Indiana, and discussing the remarkable feats of LeBron James is probably not the greatest radio in the world, but I think it's a little bit applicable to Indiana potentially, but more so, I do think that we take for granted in the moment how remarkable it is that this guy is going to turn 42 years old this year, and assuming that he is able to still have his body, for the most part, cooperate with him, he is still statistically, what would you say, Scott, a top 30 player in the league?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the point is we're talking about a guy, at clearly the back end of his career and treating it as this is going to shift the entirety of the WNBA. And we did hear Adam Silver say yesterday, I mean, this is obvious, but we're not going to put out a TV schedule until we know exactly where he's going to be. Of course not. That would be silly. But it, again, speaks to where he is in his career in that he is a needle mover, quite frankly. And so now it remains to be seen. I think why it's relevant, Jake, it actually is a lot here, is because it was LeBron and his teams that were constantly standing in the way of Indiana's best shot.
Right.
He closed the
Correct.
door on this franchise so many different times that you can't talk about the Pacers in the last decade without probably starting with LeBron.
Yeah, no question about that. And that's why, I've had several people tell me, they're like, I don't want him here because he would completely disrupt the chemistry of that team. And I'm like, guys, the chemistry of that team, one thing they have in common is that they all had his poster on their wall as a kid, right? I mean, I don't think that and especially if Tyrese Halliburton is the one that is recruiting it, Halliburton is the leader of that locker room, no question. That's not going to change, especially if you bring in a guy that is close with him. When you talk about the lightning rod aspect of it, I found it fascinating, Scott. Scott Agness, our guest from Fieldhouse Files, he's on the Schwab Men's 2-in-1 hotline. I found it fascinating that Adam Silver now has come out to say with Caitlin Clark exactly what we've been discussing. She has that same it factor that transcends past her sport into being attached to storylines and narratives in many different areas. But the question is, Scott, and I think they've weathered this a little bit, but would you agree that there was a time, even though they may not say it, where it was a distraction at no fault of hers, just all of the bot online narrative noise around Caitlin Clark?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to hear Adam Silver flat out come out and say that, right? Because he's been a big advocate of hers when he sits courtside at a couple games per year and then joins the TV booth. One of the things he brings up usually is Clark and her positive impact to this franchise, to this city, and on the NBA as a whole. I think he has never shied from doing that, whereas Kathy Engelberg more often than not has and tried to make it more of a collective. But yeah, here in Indy, we've been talking about this side story that, to be clear, has nothing to do with her. She hasn't started anything. Fever, no one in media. It's just this, to use your word, it's this vortex online that we try to make sense of, quite frankly. And there's so much basketball to discuss through all this, but I just feel bad. She's trying to get healthy. She's trying to be back out there. She's trying to knock down shots. And I can't imagine even the things some people probably are saying courtside to her throughout all this, even though most of it, quite frankly, is all love and almost obsession. They love seeing Clark out on the court.
What did they not do against Golden State?
Man, the offense, Jake, was just there was just no fluidity with anything. And then first of all, it started with how the game began, dropping behind 12-2. You shifted to the bench, made a few subs, got a little jolt of energy with Sophie Cunningham and others. It certainly starts defensively, but in a game like this where you knew going in it was going to be low scoring, you weren't going to be able to get out in transition, and this Golden State team wanted to make it a half-court game. The offense just got bogged down, Jake, to the point where there was not much flow and a lot more standing around and waiting for you to do it rather than let's all do it, I felt like.
Scott, when you look at – Scott Agness is our guest, Fieldhouse Files. When you look at this team, and again, I'm going to ask you a question. I keep going back and forth on this in my mind, and I can't definitively say. It's tough. Do you believe that they are better when Caitlin Clark is playing her style that makes her undoubtedly one of, if not the best visionaries on the floor in facilitating with her incredible vision and passing ability? Or are they better when Caitlin Clark is playing in her incredible and what may be the best in the league ability to score with the basketball in her hands and getting the ball over to her and using her as the spreader of the defense? Are they better when the ball begins with in Caitlin Clark's hands, or are they better in facilitating for her and having someone else running their offense?
Yeah, I think they're best when the ball's in her hands and allowing for her to create and open everything up for everybody else, right? Go back to the beginning of the season even when she was still trying to get her feet under her, but she was dishing out 8, 9, 10 assists. I think that assist number is more indicative of the performance that she had and the team had, Jake, than much more than her point total. The points, I think, will come as they get into the flow of the offense. She's going to take a couple logo threes. She's going to attack at least a couple times, and she should be getting to the free throw line probably 4 or 5 times per game. But if she's just doing 25 points and not assists, I don't think this team is at its best. And this team, while they have captured some wins in the last couple of games, the assist numbers as a team has been lower than to be expected. So that's something I'll be watching, including tonight when they play Seattle, a team that's clearly rebuilding, worst team in the league. This could be one of those games, Jake, where you get some positive momentum back and can be a lot more decisive, I think, where they're headed here with just a handful of games left before All-Star weekend.
Scott, we did a thing on the program this week. I'm going to invite you into it. I'm going to put you on the spot here. You ready?
You got it.
I'm curious your thought on this. Eddie and I did a countdown, so you don't have to give me 5, right? Okay. Most played out things in sports. Things that, and I don't even necessarily mean players. I mean, like, for example, I don't know where it came from. I'm over people using the term natty. Hey, did you go to the natty? How about Indiana winning the natty? Just say title, national championship, whatever. That was one of mine. Another of mine was NFL defensive turnover celebrations. Okay, great. It's the second quarter. You're down 7 and you picked up a fumble. Great. You don't need to run to the other end of the end zone and act like you're posing at the Grand Canyon. I would like to know Scott Agness's, give me 1 or 2. I'll give you a chance to think about it here. Maybe this radio station, this radio show, I should say, is your answer. Maybe me coming up with power rankings is your answer. Give me a Scott Agness thing in sports that to you has completely hit the expiration date.
I'll say the number one thing, and this is very general, it's debates. It's the debate context. Like, I don't enjoy that version of sports where everything, I don't like anything you said, you hate everything I said. More specifically to your question, to me, it's when you hype up a specific game. It's week 2. It's the must-win game. Today sets the table for tonight's, for the rest of, I'm like, no, technically it's not. I know I'm very much a stickler with that one, fundamentally. So that one I go off of for sure.
I think, Scott, you know this because you have been around this industry and a part of it for a long time.
Yeah.
And I could do a 20-minute dissertation on it, but I'll make it very brief. Once we got into the wild, wild west of real estate for television viewership, okay, with cable television. And once Fox, NBC, ESPN, once all of them realized that they could have multiple endless number of channels, they started opening up endless number of channels in attempt to get as many broadcast live event rights as they could. And in the non-cycle years of having those sports, if they didn't land them from a broadcast standpoint, they had to fill time. So the way to fill time was to get sports conversation on television. That's cool. But then it turned into every show is going to be a panelist show of debate and argument back and forth. And that, I think...
And outrage, quite frankly.
Correct.
That's the other thing. It's
Correct.
outrage.
I would agree with that. And that ran its course pretty quickly, right?
Yeah. It's like, for instance, I think we have good conversation. We're not debating and jumping on top of each. To me, that's not fundamentally a good product to enjoy. It's very cheap to produce is why it's happening.
And here's the other thing. I don't say anything that's worth debating because I'm always right.
There it is. There's got to be a sounder, Eddie. Come on.
Eddie left the room. Eddie left 15 minutes ago. Eddie sometimes just, I'll look up and I'm like, where did Eddie go? We should have a sounder on here, actually, that's where did Eddie go? Eddie, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. You know, it's Friday today, right, Eddie?
Yeah.
It's been, I don't know if you know this or not, Scott, it's been Friday for Eddie since Tuesday, right? That's the one thing.
Yeah.
Here's one other question for you, Scott, because you're more of a young tech guy than I. But based on that, and this has nothing to do with sports, but I'm going to ask you anyway to take advantage of the resource while I have you. Is it me and my old, outdated nature? Am I missing something here? Or am I doing something wrong, or can I fix it? Where if you leave me, and I know nobody anymore leaves voicemails on a phone, that's kind of weird, but more often than not, when my phone tells me I have a voicemail and I go to it, it's actually something from like 14 hours ago, and it's just now telling me that. Is that me? Do I have a setting wrong?
I don't think so. No, I think right now we're waiting on this new iOS update because I had one missed call yesterday and it showed up as like 3, and I was like, I recognized I missed 2 of those like 3 days ago, and it popped up as 3 new ones. So I don't understand that at all myself. Did you ever get your car figured out in terms of your CarPlay?
No, again, all I want to do is listen to the radio and then occasionally my own music. And from what I can tell right now, I have, through a number of different avenues, I have actually shut out power in Bulgaria because I'm just pushing stuff and swiping, and I'm turning on this and turning off that, and I don't know what anything's doing. So I'm old school, man. I plug it in.
You would think,
and I
Jake,
drive.
You'd think Eddie or someone could make you a QR to make it work for you. I don't know.
Eddie?
Stop it.
Eddie, thank you.
Stop it, Scott.
I don't know if you know this or not, Scott.
Encourage it.
Thank you for saying that. That's taking the kids were doing 6-7. Now they're doing QR. QR.
Yeah.
It's massively. I heard it last night when I was walking around with a bunch of kids. All right, Fever in action tonight. It is. What time is the game getting underway tonight, Eddie?
7:30 tip, 7 o'clock pregame.
Thank you. Okay, Fever in action tonight, taking on Seattle. Scott will have all the coverage as well. Fieldhouse Files, where you can see it. He is now on the Schwab Men's 2-in-1 hotline. Appreciate it, Scott. Enjoy the weekend, all right?
You got it. Thanks,
Scott
guys.
Agness joining us on the program. Again, one would assume that this is opportunity for them tonight, speaking of the Fever, to get back on the right side of things because Seattle coming in at 6-20. And I would agree with Scott from the offensive standpoint. It was a disappointment for certain against Seattle, but also I just think Seattle, in the pace that they play, that was a challenge for the Fever, was the pace in which they played. Just kept them off kilter. I thought each time the Fever got close, you've seen games like this where your team is playing and you're like, okay, if they can just get it to 3, then they get the lead or they get it down and it's tied up and then they fall back again and it's back and forth and it oscillates. And that's one of those where they were kind of chasing the tiger by the tail there. And that is one of the things that Golden State's just a difficult matchup for them.
Very difficult.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, they've only beat them once since they have became a WNBA franchise, and that was earlier this year. They lost every meeting last year. They just play a very physical brand of basketball, and Gabby Williams has been the best defender against Caitlin Clark that I've seen since Caitlin entered the league because she's got the foot speed to stay in front of her, and she's got long arms to kind of disrupt the passing lanes and not allow Caitlin to get off clean looks like she likes to get. And outside of that, whenever you take the Fever away from, that up-tempo style they want to play and they start knocking down threes, they're a hard team to beat.
Other big thing that's going to happen this weekend, aside from obviously that, and I am curious of this. I asked earlier about this. I have really enjoyed the World Cup. And I really enjoyed it. A strange thing happens every year during the NCAA tournament. Every year during the NCAA tournament, everyone gets super psyched for the opening 2 rounds. And the NCAA tournament to me is unique because I find myself watching and glued to the set for each and every possession of Texas against New Mexico. And if it's a middle of January, Sunday afternoon during the polar vortex, and I'm flipping the channels, and Texas and New Mexico's on one of them, I'm probably going to Beverly Hills Cop on a different channel and staying there. But during the tournament, it's different. I watch every matchup is a fascinating one. Do you happen to have the breaking news sounder, Eddie? Go ahead if you could.
Monshon Sales has made it known, Jake, he will be taking his next steps in life and his football career to Bloomington, Indiana.
Okay, so Indiana has landed the number 1 wide receiver in America. And this is symbolic for Indiana, no question, in what it represents. This is the biggest recruit. And what I was going to get at about the World Cup is the opening rounds, you get totally into it. And then by the time one shining moment happens, you look back at those moments from the opening rounds and you're like, man, that seems like forever ago. And I think that in this World Cup, it's been that way with the United States in it. There was so much excitement and viewership and conversation about it. And then once the United States fell out, now you look at it and you're like, man, I forgot about when the U.S. played Paraguay. That feels like forever ago. And I'm curious people's level of interest in it. But Monshon Sales now going to Indiana, this is kind of the final piece, I guess, in the transformation of Indiana as a brand. Because when Curt Cignetti got to Indiana, and obviously Curt Cignetti talked about you heard all of the things when he came in about Purdue sucks, but so do Ohio State and Michigan, and I win, Google me. He knew when he took the job, and he walked around Curt Cignetti, and he looked at the infrastructure. He didn't just look at the facilities at Indiana. He looked at the belief or disbelief of the people in the building. And he basically said to anyone that would listen, the mentality here has to change. The mentality has to change. And so he began changing that mentality with that kind of over-the-top bravado. And then he had the transfers from JMU. They had the great first year, and we saw what happened a year ago. But Indiana football during that time was, of course, playing as the band of misfits. They were the underdog story that everyone fell in love with because everybody from Aiden Fisher to D'Angelo Pons to Omar Cooper to Elijah Surratt, they were all overlooked. They didn't have national attention and the wearing of the cap to determine where it was that they were going to college. I mean, Fisher and D'Angelo Pons weren't even playing in Division 1A in terms of the FCS. They were in the FBS. I always forget which one's which, but you get what I'm saying. And Indiana, Curt Cignetti banked on that by saying, I need everybody to get on board with the bravado that I'm going to spout. And then they did what they did, and now what do you have? Yes, he's a player from the state of Indiana. Yes, he's probably getting $1 million or more to go there. Yes, he's 6'5", 195 pounds. He had a year ago just under 800 yards, 9 touchdowns on the year. In his sophomore year, 568 and 7.
Jake, I watched this kid over the last couple of seasons just broadcasting high school football between here and then IndianaHighSchoolSports.com. And the way that he has grown from a freshman, like he relied a lot on just being bigger and taller than everybody else as a freshman. And so a lot of his catches were like 50-50 balls. And ever since then, it started to see it a little bit last year, became more polished as a route runner. And I made the comparison. I remember this vividly in the very first game that I called that he had like 3 catches and 2 of them were like 55-yard touchdown catches because he's bigger than everyone. Just go up, get it, and then just runs away. And to see like the growth over that, I'm curious to see how he translates to Indiana and what that'll all, entail with, being a top recruit, and how does that change, Kurt Cignetti? Does it change Kurt Cignetti's viewpoint among some of these top recruits? Because typically he hasn't gone for these types of guys.
Well, and that's the thing, because what does he always say? Like, production over potential.
Yes.
And, you already have Charlie Becker. You have Nick Marsh. He's not going to have to come in and immediately be that guy right away. It's a different Indiana now. But the one thing, and you would rather have this than not. I'm not saying that. But the one area where, again, I simply offer it for the perspective. I have watched and been a season ticket holder for Clemson football. And yes, I graduated from Indiana, right? But Clemson for years would routinely, it was a rite of passage there for about a 6-year stretch where they would get like 2 of the top 3 wide receivers in the country. And more often than not, they were very, very good players. Some of them, though, turned out to be, I get it. And then others, you're like, they end up a year later somewhere else. Look, for example, for Indiana basketball, look no further than the fact, as I always say, few of you knew who Calbert Chaney was when he was a junior at Evansville Harrison, and all of you knew who Delray Brooks was when he was a sophomore at Michigan City Rogers. One was the number 1 recruit in the country. The other was the number 6 recruit in his class. One is now the all-time leading scorer still to this day in the Big Ten. The other transferred to Providence, had a nice career, but never really panned out. Recruiting is still somewhat of an inexact science, but in this case, it seems to certainly, from a science standpoint, have all the ingredients within the chemistry of, this is a big, big, big-time player. But it's symbolically, you could say symbolically, this represents that Indiana has elevated their profile to that point. But at the same time, you have to factor in the NIL as well.
Yeah, Jake, and I think, getting the commitment is the first step, and now you just have to retain the commitment for this upcoming season, because it's becoming more and more common in today's college athletics that even though you land a guy, you're still having to recruit him even though he's already committed to go to you. Like, you have to be able to retain him for the upcoming season, and then once he gets to campus, you have to be able to hold on to him, because in his announcement, he said that he was planning to be at Indiana for 3, maybe 4 years, so you have to be able to...
Well, he's got to be there for 3, right? Not at Indiana, but I'm saying he has to play collegiately for 3.
Yes,
right?
Correct, yeah.
And then you got to hope that LSU doesn't come in and, throw $18 million at you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do want to get back into, Eddie, I'm going to let you as the producer make the executive decision. I want to get back into what I witnessed last night because it was special, and it speaks to the great part of the state of Indiana. Do I do it next, or we do that in 15?
We also have tickets to give away.
Oh, really?
Yes. Our final 4-pack of Indiana State Fair tickets for this week.
Why don't we do that, and I'll recap what happened last night, and we'll continue monitoring whether or not we can get Monchon sales all on the other side. Sound good?
All righty.
And J&B will join us just before 1 o'clock as well to find out what he's got going on for his program later today. That is, of course, part of the crossover brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air here on Query & Company. Hey there, Jake Query for Surfside. Look for the can with the sunset stripes. Surfside is iced tea with a splash of vodka, lemonade with a splash of vodka, all in one can. And you can get variety packs. You can just do one flavor if you'd like. Try out all the different flavors. I love just the straight lemonade. The blueberry lemonade has been huge. The green tea is fabulous. Raspberry tea is awesome. It's a straight iced tea as well. Surfside is just 100 calories, 2 grams of sugar. but the most important thing. No carbonation, folks, so it is so smooth and easy to enjoy in this kind of weather in particular. Look for Surfside wherever you buy your favorite adult beverages, and please be 21 and please consume responsibly.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
So Manchan Sales has decided to stay home in Indiana. And I want to get back into something that I mentioned earlier. But I want to thank, John and the other folks last night in Peru that hosted me, allowed for me to go up and see what I saw. And let me begin by saying this. I mean, here you have a kid from Indianapolis, Lawrence North High School, the number one wide receiver in America. And yes, it is symbolic that now, between NIL and national championships and Kurt Signetti, you understand why a kid like that would want to stay home and play at Indiana. And what that means for the Indiana football program is big. Last night I learned the story. Maybe I had heard it at some point in my life, of Francis Slocum. Francis Slocum was from out east, Pennsylvania, I believe, in the 19th century, when she, and I don't know the situation or the circumstances for it, but she was abducted at a young age by a member of, or a group of members of the Delaware Indian tribe, who then took Francis Slocum to north central area of Indiana near the Wabash River, in a settlement in a community now known as Peru, Indiana. And when Francis Slocum, who by then had been renamed as part of the Delaware Indian community as Maconaquah, perhaps you've heard of Maconaquah High School, her family eventually tracked her down when she was a young adult and found out where she was, and she was obviously relieved and joyed to again be reacquainted with her family members. But in her mind, she was no longer Francis. She was indeed Maconaquah. And she said, you know what? I want to stay here. And so she stayed and lived the rest of her life in the area just north of the Wabash River in Miami County, Indiana. Because there's something about Indiana, perhaps, that makes all of us call it home and enjoy it. And in the case of Monshawn Sales, sure, all of the aspects of Kurt Signetti and the NIL and the national championship would be why a young player would want to stay and play at Indiana. I understand that. But those aren't the only episodes of precedent when it comes to that area in Indiana. Like, for example, the Hagenbeck Wallace traveling circus of the 19th century. The Wallace traveling circus. They were a rival of the Ringling Brothers. And they would travel the railroads to go from one circus to the next, which was very common in that area, in that era, the late 19th century. And when they would transfer, where the railroad lines crisscrossed, essentially, the crossroads, or at that time, the cross tracks of America, was up by what is now Peru, Indiana. And at that time was already beginning known as Peru. And there happened to be a gentleman in that area that was a breeder and a seller of horses. Of course, in that time period, if you were a circus, horses were very important, not just for your travel, if you weren't using the railroads, but also for your acts. And so the Wallace Circus and other circuses, as they would travel through and stay the night in this area, they would buy horses, and they got to know the horse breeders and the people of Peru, Indiana, and eventually said, you know what? Since this is where we have to come through most frequently anyway, can we start storing some of our circus equipment here? That grew into, can we begin storing it for the winter here? And so these people that were traveling for a living somehow found it to be that they wanted to kind of set their stuff in Peru, Indiana. And there's something about this state, maybe it's why Monshawn Sales partially is staying and going to Bloomington. We like our own here. We're excited that Indiana has the number one wide receiver in the country committed to the Hoosiers, not just because he's the number one wide receiver in America and the first five-star recruit in the history of Indiana football, but because he's from Lawrence North High School and he's one of our own. And In Peru, Indiana, I always knew that they called themselves the circus capital of the world. I always knew they had this goofy amateur circus that Jeremiah Johnson was in once in a thing called Side by Side, which I thought actually was a musical act, and Roman ladders and other such things, and I kind of snickered at it. And forever I've said, you know what? And I almost have flippantly said, I'm going to go to the Peru circus. So last night, for the first time, I did exactly that. Just got in the car, drove up, went to Peru. And I got up there to Peru, and I got into town. And the reality is that small-town America in the United States right now is a hurting place. A lot of the jobs have left. The commerce has left. The identities have left. And a lot of those places, what you see is poverty, plight, despair. And I think to an extent, and I apologize to the people of Miami County, I assumed that's what I would see when I arrived in Peru. And what I saw were beautiful homes and an area and a town that felt good about itself. Maybe it was because it just happened to be the week of their annual circus. But I saw people that felt good about themselves. And I saw people that, like Maconaquah, like Manchan Sales announcing that he's going to Indiana. I saw people that understood value and understood comfort in being around those that we know. And even though I'm not from Peru, from the time that I arrived, it was like I was treated like I was one that they knew. And I walked along the main street right there in the town square where they had elephant ears and carnival acts and rides and everything else, because this is the week that for the 66th straight year, they have put on their amateur circus. Because back in those days, in the late 19th century and the early 20th century, when the circuses left their stuff in the wintertime and housed them in Peru, eventually the people of Peru said, as long as you're keeping and storing this stuff here, why don't we learn how to use some of it and do some of your tricks in the winter? And then as a tribute to that, not only did they have the venues where they stored everything that is now the Circus Hall of Fame, but they decided some 7 decades ago to begin doing an amateur circus. And last night I had the pleasure of walking in and witnessing it, something that I had initially kind of snickered about and felt a little bit above. And I walked in and what I saw was unbelievable. Now, there weren't animals there. There weren't necessarily like the clown acts there, but there was an incredible display of dedication, commitment, athleticism, the same things that Manchan Sales have, which is why people are excited for him to go and play football at Indiana. But these are all in a town of 11,000 people. There were over 200 kids, 230, I think, between the ages of 7 and 21, most of them no older than high school. And they put on a 2.5-hour display and exhibition of unbelievable acrobatic acts, high wire acts, trapeze acts, rope swinging acts. It was unbelievable. I was amazed by it. I was amazed and in awe of the athleticism and the talent on display that typically we see and we celebrate on the football field of a kid that commits to Indiana. But here it was in this, an all-encompassing display within this town of everything about Indiana that I love. I love that it's a town that when, sure, I think it's called Square D, or there was a company there that was around forever that I think has left, or a lot of people worked at Chrysler and Kokomo, and a lot of those jobs have gone away. But I love the fact that in an area that typically more often than not by the letter or the average of the law in this country would have young people that are really trying to fight for an identity of what they can be in their little small town. They already have the identity of what they can be because they've seen it for 66 consecutive years in this amateur circus where the entire town says, we're going to feel good about ourselves and show you who we are and what we are. We're going to show you our identity. We are Peru, Indiana, the circus capital of the world. And so when I walked in there, what I saw was, and I could see it in the adults, I could see it in the behavior of the kids. You could see an investment in a not-for-profit group that has taken something and made it a passion for their young people so that their young people commit to a routine and excellence, a goal, and a discipline to allow themselves to be part of what represents the identity of who they are. And I sat in total awe and bewilderment for 2.5 hours of the athleticism, the precision, and the pride in which these young people performed. And I loved everything about it. And it represented what is the best of Indiana. And I apologize to the people of Miami County and Peru that I was naive to what it was that they have been so proud about. And for so long, anybody from there that I've met has told me that I need to go see. And I'm telling you right now, Saturday will be the final, tonight and Saturday, the final two performances. Jeremiah Johnson, who's a native of Peru, a Roman Ladders alum, he will be the grand marshal of their parade on Saturday that closes things out. But if you are from Central Indiana and you want to know what is the best of us, next year, mark your calendar for July and go up to see exactly that. Because like Maconaquah, like Mochan Sales, and like myself, Jake Query, Indiana's a special place. And it's special because we all have the ability to show the best of it when it is called upon to do so. And I know people are excited about Sales being able to go down to Bloomington and do exactly that, representing Lawrence North. And I'm excited for the people of Peru to be able to do that again next year for the 67th year. And I'll probably be there for that as well. J&V's the pride of Greene County in southern Indiana. He's going to join me in just a couple minutes. We'll find out what he's got cooking as part of his program as he warms it up. Brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com, 317-353-2141, an official Heil Heating and Cooling dealer.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Okay, so J&B's up at 3 o'clock today, District Tap downtown, and most importantly, he's going to get Blue Oyster Cult tickets, right?
Oh, my goodness. The attitude is going to take place.
Attitude?
Mike Damone.
Once you have
Robert
that, then you have
Romanis.
the attitude.
Yeah, I cannot wait. The District Tap, me, Hurst, and Lamontes is going to bring me and us to you, along with Tamika Catchings will be there live with us at the District Tap today. It's going to be one hellaciously awesome time. I can't wait.
Okay, John will be doing that at 3 o'clock. We've got tickets to give away for the State Fair. You don't need Mike Damone for them. You just need to text right now at 239-1070, and if you're the third to get in, you're on your way. Thanks for listening to Query and Company.